schools closed for months, all because of the pandemic. Kids forced to stay at home. And it's usually the mothers who are left to deal with the added burden.
I usually have 1 hour in my calendar blocked for lunch, and you have to do grocery shopping, cooking, eating, cleaning up, and checking homework in 1 hour. That's just impossible.
As the world struggles with COVID-19, some women fear that it's pushing them back into traditional roles. The pandemic as a setback for women. We'll speak with an expert in just a moment. But first, let's look at the story of one woman forced to put a pause on her career after the local schools closed.
Watercolors instead of spreadsheets. Normally, Anna Mante would be sitting in the office right now. But with schools and nurseries closed due to the pandemic and her husband at work, she has to stay at home. Something she never wanted. This is a standstill, and it is based on the fact that as a woman I said, I'll step back. I'll put my own needs on hold. And yes, that feels like I'm in a type of role right now that doesn't really fit me. Being a good housewife was never Anna's intention. She'd just finished a master's in education when the crisis hit. She postponed finding a job to cater for the family. Now pancakes are often on the menu, one of the few things she knows how to cook. But even that can get stressful. You can't decide anything on your own. You're always together, 2, 3, 4 other people. There's not a minute of rest. And you can imagine what that does to you as a person when you're constantly under pressure, constantly caring for someone else.
Permanent unter Druck stehst oder permanent Ansprechpartner bist.
Oh no, we burned them because we talk too much. Antje Asmus explains that the coronavirus crisis forces women back into old gender roles. Research shows there is a backward development in partnerships. 26% of women have reduced their working hours to organize childcare in the coronavirus crisis, but only 16% of men have done so. The end of a long day for Anna's husband, Konstantin. Before the crisis, he and his wife were both working and taking care of the kids. Now he's suddenly the classic working dad, which is not to his taste either.
Es ist wirklich manchmal nicht so leicht.
It is not that easy. I simply earn more. That will hopefully change so that one day I won't have to work full time. But that's in the future. And I think that our society still promotes gender stereotypes that are no longer appropriate. And that doesn't recognize the fact that fathers want to be with their children.
Einfach bei den Kindern sein wollen. Wir sind ja weit genug unten.
Anna and Konstantin know they'll have to negotiate this fragile balance until fall. Once schools reopen, they hope to get back to a life with more self-determination for both of them.
And I'm joined now by Joanna Maycock. She's Secretary General of the European Women's Lobby. Now, that's an umbrella group of women's advocacy or associations, in Europe. And she joins me from Brussels. Welcome, Joanna. Now, we know that the pandemic has uprooted many families and workers. Why is it that women are carrying such an especially heavy load?
Well, women are actually the backbone of our societies, and they already carry a very heavy load. And what this pandemic has done is actually shone a light on, and in some cases exacerbated, what were already very deep-rooted inequalities between women and men in Europe. In fact, we've actually stopped progressing on gender equality, on equality between women and men in Europe. We've stopped progressing for 10 years already. So there is a great deal to do to really start to fast forward and fast track equality between women and men. And certainly this pandemic, we've seen families really challenged, and particularly women bearing the brunt of childcare, of stepping back from their jobs, of going part-time, of being made redundant. Overwhelmingly, women have taken on that burden. But what we know already is that women already do the vast majority of childcare and unpaid care work and domestic work in Europe still today. And that's hardly shifted in the last generation.
Mm-hmm. Now, we saw a report earlier about Anne in Germany stepping back to take care of her kids during the pandemic. Can we say that things will go back to normal for her once the schools and daycare centers reopen?
Yeah, I think that story is very, very typical for millions and millions of women and millions of families across Europe. We're really, what we see already is that it's going to be a political choice what happens next. And the choices that our leaders make right now about the kind of society we want to build post this pandemic, the kind of values we want to put at the center of that society are going to be really important. With the financial crisis in 2008, what we saw was that the response, the political choice to pursue austerity was really done at the cost of women. It was done on the backs of women. In fact, we saw that women paid around 75% of the costs of the cuts to public services through cutbacks to their jobs, through cutbacks to care infrastructure, which impacted on women's labour market participation. So we need to learn from the mistakes we made then, and make sure that now, as leaders make choices about the kind of society we want to rebuild after this pandemic, that the issues of inequality between women and men are put centre stage in the analysis, in the policies that are put in place, and in terms of the budgets that are put in place. And in particular, the emphasis on care. What gives me hope is that actually this pandemic has brought into a public conversation the issues about who's doing the care. How do we want the care infrastructure to look? How do we want to care for our children, for our older people, for each other? And who is going to be doing that? So that means we need a really bold new care deal for Europe.
And Joanna, briefly, if you can, are you seeing in the recovery packages that are being laid out right now by individual nations, do you see some of these policies being put in there that you want to see advanced?
We've seen in the response to the pandemic some really good measures, particularly when it comes to addressing violence against women, which we've also seen increase during the pandemic. And we've seen a more political conversation about care, elder care, child care, and care for disabled persons, and the disproportionate impact on women. But when it comes to the actual response, and when it comes to the money, which is where we see how the policy is translated into action, we absolutely have not seen enough. We need to see really at least half of the resources for the recovery package going to women. So we're calling for half the money, at least, to go to measures which address the inequalities between women and men. So no, not enough is being done yet.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Joanna Maycock with the European Women's Lobby in Brussels. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And it's time now to answer your questions about COVID-19. Over to our science correspondent, Derek Williams.
I read that the virus might have arrived in Europe by early November. Is there evidence it was around earlier than in China at the end of December?
The working thesis has always been that the first COVID-19 infections occurred at a wet market in Wuhan back in early December. But there's been a lot of suspicion over whether that's really the whole story, especially since a new study that looked at how the virus has evolved said it might have emerged as early as October. Then another heavily contested report from Harvard researchers, which hasn't been peer-reviewed yet, recently also made a splash. It looked at, among other things, satellite images of parking lots in Wuhan hospitals. And it says visitors to them surged as early as last August, though the authors admitted that their evidence was not an airtight argument for pushing back the origins of the pandemic. So while there are some claims the outbreak began long before the first official cases appeared in Wuhan, they're still only supported by disputed data.
Is Germany also working on a vaccine for COVID-19?
This question came in a few weeks ago, but it now seems like it's the right time to answer it since the German government just announced that it was sinking 300 million euros into a German biotech company called CureVac. You might remember that that's the firm that Donald Trump allegedly tried to lure to the U.S. back in March. Its vaccine platform, which uses what's called messenger RNA to provoke an immune response, is currently in testing in animal models. And the company says results so far are very promising. A rival German firm called BioNTech has also teamed up with US-based company Pfizer in pursuit of the same goal, but it hasn't received any funding from the German government.
I see people jogging and cycling wearing masks. Is that medically advisable?
First of all, I can tell you from personal experience that jogging with a mask is no fun at all. It gets really hot, it gets really humid, and it seriously affects your performance. That said, if you are infectious, it'll probably make you less of a danger to the people around you. Experts now widely accept that the virus is transmitted as an aerosol, so theoretically, at least, an infected person panting along in the park is giving off clouds of floating infectious droplets. On the other hand, almost all of our solid information on aerosol distribution comes from enclosed spaces. What we do know is that outdoor transmission of the virus appears to be very rare. So long and short, like pretty much everyone else here in Berlin, I stopped jogging with a mask pretty quickly, even though there's no real scientific consensus on it.
And finally, a feast for the eyes, thanks to pandemic measures. Wildlife is reclaiming the tourist-free Galapagos Islands, located 1,000 kilometers off the coast of Ecuador. Sea lions, iguanas, and many bird species are now moving freely on the archipelago, which has been under lockdown for more than 2 months. Scientists studying the impact of tourism say a number of key species have returned since travel was halted. Now they'll compare their observations to measurements taken once tourists return.